Hey, everybody. My name is Andrew Smith, and I'm an instructor of English at Tennessee Tech University in Cookeville, Tennessee. And I happen to be a humongous fan of a musical group called the Grateful Dead that many of you know was originally based in San Francisco in the late 60s and continues in many sort of iterations beyond the Grateful Dead. And I'm with my colleague from the English department, Professor Ted Pelton. Ted Pelton is a fiction writer and an American lit kind of scholar and a creative writing scholar here at Tennessee Tech. And Ted and I have been good friends ever since he got to Cookeville, and we have a lot in common. And we're so excited to share with you all today that author Peter Connors is going to come and join us on a broadcast much like this one 2 weeks from tonight at 7 p.m. Central Time. That would be February 25th, 2021. So Ted, tell us why we would want to hang out with you and Peter Connors on a live stream in a couple of weeks. What's Peter bringing to our campus and our community?
Peter is a really terrific figure as an alternative poetry figure, someone who tells us about the significance of the Grateful Dead. One of my favorite things that he did was to do a book about Allen Ginsberg, the Beat poet, and his correspondence, his psychedelic partnership with Timothy Leary. He's someone who brings that kind of hippie vibe from the 1960s into like the present, and at the same time is someone who has been responsible for channeling some of the great poetic voices of our time into our lives, in his publishing work. So he can talk about a lot of different things, and I just want to hear him rap about all of this stuff. But I know you're like a great Grateful Dead fan. I like the Grateful Dead, and it's funny because I've never quite seen why they're just so much the life for some people. I wonder if you'd talk a little bit about that. What makes the Grateful Dead so Grateful Dead?
Well, in one of the books of Peter's that I actually own is called Growing Up Dead. And I bought that book based on the cover, which is a multi-colored kind of tapestry of tie-dye colors with a really groovy, curvy font and a picture of a VW microbus on there. So I literally bought the book Growing Up Dead, and this is before I knew that you knew Peter Connors. As a matter of fact, I bought the other book, The White Hand Society, right. The correspondence and relationship between Ginsberg and Leary, before I even knew you or knew that you knew Peter Connors. And the Growing Up Dead book in particular captures your question so elegantly, because what Peter does in that book is he just talks story. It's like it's a reflective diary entry of, eating bad, bad sandwich. I mean, whatever. I don't remember exactly what they're eating, but like grilled cheese sandwiches in the parking lot. The Grateful Dead is an immersive experience. Right. It's a full body immersive experience. And for young people growing up in the 80s, kind of before the internet, so we're the second, Peter and I would be second generation Deadheads. There was a kind of alienation that had sort of settled into the Reagan years, a kind of mediocrity, really. And going on Dead Tour in the late 80s and the early 90s, which was a renaissance for the band before Jerry's untimely passing in 95, it was a kind of a tribal ritual. It was a shamanic initiation rite for suburban teenagers. And it had all of the problematic that you would hear today of like, you're just a tourist, you're a weekend warrior. I mean, all of the things that are problematic about white hippies, were problematic about the Grateful Dead, but they didn't care. They didn't care that, they had mommy and daddy's money. You had, as you have, Ann Coulter is a Deadhead. Al Franken is a Deadhead. Wow. There's no boundaries. The Grateful Dead are a radically inclusive community, and it was a kind of a tribal ritual to become fully immersed in it. And once you're in it, you kind of can't leave. It's like the whole Hotel California. You're once you've been initiated, you can act like you don't want to go back to the show, but you really can't wait to get to the next show. And I forgot about them for almost 30 years. And then Dead and Company got together with John Mayer a few years ago, and I was at a really, really good place in my life where I could afford to go to concerts. And I I started getting really into the Dead again. I started collecting. I didn't have the cassette tapes that a lot of them did, but now I have a website like archive.org, and I can go online, and I only went to 2 actual Grateful Dead concerts, Alpine Valley summer of '87 and Detroit spring of '88. But I can go on the internet and listen to the concert that I attended.
Okay.
And I definitely need to reconstruct that experience in my brain, because I was so blasted. I was a kid. I mean, I was out of my mind. I wasn't in my best mind. So I need to go listen to that tape, because I don't remember really much of anything else other than the couple hours preceding it and maybe the afterglow. But the shows themselves are very blurry in my mind, because I was pretty well off the launch pad at that point.
Well, you mentioned the tapes, which is something that is very interesting to me about the Grateful Dead. They're the only band, well, the first band anyway. I guess Phish starts doing this later, but they're the only band that basically actively encouraged their fans to bring recording equipment to the shows and get and circulate these tapes. And this started as a kind of folksy, trading stuff, and it's a really populist gesture, and the Dead is a band that I first became aware of in college, because a local bar had a Grateful Dead night where people would bring their own tapes to this, and they would just play this stuff, and it was always something new and interesting and weird, and, sometimes murky, you could hardly hear what was going on, but that was kind of fun too. It just had that texture of the real, and the fact that it was initiated by the fans was really interesting. So, I actually have one of Peter's books here, because this is his new book, and it's Cornell 77, The Music, the Myth, and the Magnificence of the Grateful Dead Concert at Barton Hall. And basically this is making real, in the same way tapes do, leaving a record of something that would otherwise be ephemeral. Everyone says, "Oh, I saw this great show," but then they're often, like you say, "But I don't really remember it that well, and that was many years ago," and whatnot. And to make something real out of something which would otherwise disappear is very cool. And this basically commemorates a point in time, 1977, that is among Dead heads, seen as like the pinnacle, or at least then they start to argue, or like, which pinnacle do you want to talk about? But the 1977, the Grateful Dead seemed to have been in a kind of zone, and like they were just coming back from a layoff of some time, and they got back into it, and they really hit their stride in this impressive way. And Peter talks about this show. I'm in the middle of this book now. It's really fun. Talks about this show, talks about all of the songs, as they're singing them, and what a great, unpacking of a live moment, which, is kind of fascinating, because you have all these thoughts going through your head when you're experiencing something like that, but then they just disappear. And this is a kind of reconstruction of that, which is very cool, and locates itself in something that's also very cool, which is the Dead and this experience, with their concerts, and, that's like no other band.
I'm even wearing one of my many Jerry Grateful Dead shirts today in honor of us having this conversation. And it's liturgy. I mean, Deadheads are like monks and rabbis. These are sacred texts, and they get carried around like Torah scrolls, or like other religious iconography or artwork, and they get studied. The Dead fan base studies these. There's the Dark Star Orchestra, and they just simply recreate actual concerts. They're a Dead tribute band, and I used to resent the idea of a Dead tribute band, but I still went to them. I went to a lot of Dead tribute bands as far back as the '80s, but I didn't understand the purpose of a tribute band. But I do now, that I've got a lot more experience in theology and religious studies. Rock and roll fandoms are religious movements, or what are called new religious movements. And so you have these kind of common shared experiences that need to be perpetuated in order for the tradition to go forward. And so what Dead cover bands do is that they become a part of this living tradition. And what's in the Dead canon is pretty much all the songs that the Dead ever played. And so they
Right.
brought in all this blues music and gospel music. And I think that's the other thing too about the Grateful Dead that are so interesting and why they're so endless is because no show is ever the same. The set lists always change, the versions always change, and there's little intricacies. And I'm not sophisticated like that musicologically, but a musicologically sophisticated devotee will be able to see these differences, you know, in a set list and even in the way that the songs are played. And you know, this is really a form of devotion. And then you have that tribal recognition. I mean, you just have to have a steal your face bumper sticker, a steal your face poster, T-shirt, whatever, or any kind of dancing bear. Once one Deadhead sees one little tidbit of your iconography, it's all over, you know. And as I was leaving Dead and Company in Charlotte a while ago, I don't remember which time. I've seen them in Charlotte twice. I think it was the last time. And I had been on a several-day concert binge, and I hadn't been sleeping much. And I was walking back to where my cousin was going to pick me up and drive me home. I ran into this dad and his son who had just left the show together. And, the dad was my age and the son was, a late teen, early 20s. And the dad and I immediately started discussing the set list and what we liked and didn't like about the show that we had just seen. And it was just, there's just a camaraderie. And then there's the stuff. I mean, the parking lot alone. I mean, you could go to Shakedown Street and blow several $100s and get some of the coolest stuff that you've never, original artwork and good food. I looked forward to just, what vegetarian delicacy I was going to buy on Shakedown Street. And I met a food vendor, and they had some nickname for it and a logo on it. And this was a kid, probably the age of our students at Tech. And he had inherited this parking lot business from his dad. His dad had handed down to him his parking lot business for the Dead tour. And he was like a second generation tour head who was going to sell, sandwich. They were like wraps, you throw a flour tortilla on a hot griddle and you throw a bunch of vegetables in it and a little bit of seasoning and you wrap that thing, a little cheese melts down. It's like a calzone quesadilla type mixture thing and charged $12 for it, or $8 or whatever you want. And some happy person has dinner, it's an incredible thing. I had tickets for so many shows last summer, Ted, that I had to give up. Well, they got canceled because of the COVID. I can't wait to go to a Dead and Company show again. I'm absolutely, it's an all-consuming hobby, and the only thing about it for me is that I have a limited budget. Everybody does, and I'm just obsessed about 10 other bands besides the Grateful Dead. I'm very I'm not faithful to the Dead. I cheat on the Dead all the time with other bands.
You'll have to let me know when you go to the next one of these. It sounds like fun, and you're reminding me too of a couple of things. When you mention the kind of religious experience part of it, one of the things that interested me when I was reading this book by the new book by Peter is that he talks about the Dead as taking out of the 1960s hippie kind of scene, not the political aspect of it, which I'm very interested in, and it seems like that's a very powerful part of that because there was the Vietnam War and the civil rights movement, all coming to a head at that moment. But the Dead was really more interested in the spiritual element of the 1960s, which is really fascinating to me. And it also kind of makes me think of how the Dead are a lot like the kind of music tradition that a critic like Grail Marcus talks about in the Weird Old America. The whole idea of how weird rootsy folk music is and its mixture with the blues, and that gives rise to the Americana music that we have today, this new kind of genre. And figures like Lucinda Williams, and we've both talked about Wilco, very different kinds of bands and musical experiences. But the Dead kind of precede all of that, like kind of grandfathers of that movement, like Bob Dylan, certainly was, knowing all of these old folk songs that are also part of the repertoire. The Dead take these standards and redo them, and that's part of what they do. And the band too is kind of in that, the songs from Big Pink and all of that stuff, is in that genre as well, as these grandsires of Americana, that it's just this old time feeling of pre-commercial music, in America, that's so rare in a very kind of produced musical environment that you get
and at the same time, there's a 10-minute interval in the second set where they're pioneers of electronica and improvisational, the whole drums in space. I mean, and that's the thing, is that they're so multi-genre. So they're everything you just said. But then they're like 4 or 5 different other things, that they also are. And I mean, a lot of fans go to the bathroom during Drums in Space, and more room on the dance floor for me to get my freak on. I mean, it's the space, and drums is great. I love a drum circle, but space, if they're on for space, I mean, it is the weird, talk about weird. I mean, it is. And I was, because I was on in various different kinds of medicinal intoxicants when I was a kid, I bought into the whole thing. Well, it's that experience, right? That's right. But as an adult who goes to concerts completely stone cold sober, not just no drugs, no alcohol either, just nothing except a cup of coffee, I have used yogic breathing techniques and dance to achieve a fairly ecstatic experience at a Grateful Dead concert. That is, and then of course I remember the set list. I have a pristine recall of what happened, and it's not blurry. And also I can get to my car safely. I can get to my hotel room safely. I'm not at risk for all kinds of stuff. There's just so many risk, and the younger kids, I feel for them, but the rave community seems to be where a lot of that just pure experimentation has gone into the electronic community, but no one's doing any of it now. We're all stuck at home. I mean, the kids have missed a season of going to concerts and festivals. I mean, Bonnaroo here in Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, is a great steward of that tradition. Multi-genre, multi-stage festival in Manchester, Tennessee. But it's really hard to do this on Zoom. And I don't mean interviewing Peter Connors. If you're just joining me, I'm talking to English professor Ted Pelton. I'm English instructor Andrew Smith about the future visit 2 weeks from tonight of Grateful Dead author Peter Connors, who will be joining us on a live stream at 7 p.m. Central on Thursday, February 25th. But the show, I've watched a lot of these live streams. New Year's Eve, I watched a bunch of bands play live. But the Grateful Dead concert is not a Zoom experience. It's a zone. It's the zone, not the Zoom, and it's going to be it's going to be sweet when we can get back.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, Ted, thank you. I think we've got. You sure whetted my appetite. I hope I whetted your appetite. I hope a couple of the people that see this live stream, which will be on Facebook and YouTube, where you can watch it, will join us, the Center Stage program, which is funded by the students of Tennessee Tech to bring guest artists and authors to campus. And Ted Pelton is the campus host, and I'll be like his assistant co-host. And we welcome Peter Connors to a Tennessee Tech exclusive live stream on Thursday, February 25th, 2021 at 7 p.m. Central. So we'll pick up the conversation with him, and I'm sure he will enhance our understanding of this topic greatly. Thanks, Ted. This was really fun.
It's been a lot of fun. Thanks, Andrew.